Well, welcome to today's conversation about CRA and how we can use technology and financial literacy to make a real impact in our communities. I'm Lizanne Lightfoot from GoVA Foundation, and we are so excited to have our guest here with us today. Linda, would you go ahead and introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Linda Ezuka with CRA Today in the CRA Hub, helping CRA officers comply with the CRA and drive impact into disadvantaged communities. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Of course. And we have George Earhart, who is the Executive Director of the GoVA Foundation. George, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you everyone for listening in. I'm George Earhart, Executive Director of the GoVA Foundation, 22-year Special Operations veteran, and really passionate about supporting our warfighters and our veterans. And a big thank you to Linda, who's such a fantastic voice in CRA issues and an innovator as well. We love when we get an opportunity to collaborate with her.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. Well, today I do want to talk a little bit about obviously your CRA Today platform. And for those who might be discovering you and your resources for the first time, can you tell us a little bit about the resources that you've created and what inspired you to create that for our CRA community?
Well, sure. I'm going to share a little bit of background about me that some know, but not everybody. But I was raised by a single mother, and she, in the early 1970s, went back to her home after her divorce in Oregon, and her hometown, and she wanted to reestablish, herself. And she wanted to get a home loan, so she went to the bank to get a home loan and to purchase a home for us to live in. And she was denied because she didn't have a husband to co-sign with her, and that's before the fair lending laws. And, CRA is all about access to credit and opportunity. And that young, experience, certainly in our younger years, was interesting. And if not for the grace of a woman that extended her an agreement of sale as she built up her credit, we wouldn't be, we wouldn't be housed as we were, and all of the opportunities that were afforded us over time. So I am so blessed to have that as an origin story that really drove my commitment to community development. And I really wanted to focus on how can I support the CRA community and how can we help others leverage capital for the greater good. And sometimes our CRA officers feel alone in this work, and there wasn't really a resource for them. So I decided to try a new business model as opposed to just consulting with banks and create an online platform. And so in 2019, I switched my business model, created CRA Today, and launched. That was pre-pandemic, and then I launched the pandemic, and it was a great opportunity to bring our CRA professionals together and really create a community of connection where we can really vet difficult situations and scenarios and really build CRA programs together. Really created the community for which I wish that I had, when I was starting out this work in my bank over 31 years ago. So so blessed to be able to do this work and love the platform and community we've created together. That's a long way of saying it, but that's the origin story.
It's very inspiring, and I think it just overlaps so well with some of the communities that GoVA is aspiring to serve. We discovered you and your platform while we were learning about the CRA programs ourselves. As a nonprofit that's focused on financial literacy, GoVA learned very quickly that we needed to partner with financial supporters who could allow us to provide these financial literacy tools to our military community members for free. And so navigating all the regulations and the rules of CRA was completely new to us. I'm a military spouse. George is a military veteran, so we're very well versed in the needs of our military and veteran communities. But not as much in CRA. And so we've really worked hard to educate ourselves, to be able to partner with banks in a way that's mutually beneficial so that we can provide these financial literacy tools to our community, but do it in a way that's going to be meaningful for the banks. It's going to allow them to make that community impact, and that's really going to help to advance their CRA goals and individual aspirations. And so we're really excited now that in 2025, we've been able to partner with banks across the country and really expand in some unique ways. So today we're going to be talking about financial literacy, how technology can kind of provide that next step in the CRA world, and some of the trends that you're noticing in our community that we want CRA officers to be aware of and paying attention to. Great to have your expertise and opportunity here. I wanted to start by talking about the fact that financial literacy is obviously a very common CRA investment, but obviously there are many different programs out there and there's a lot of things that can change. So what do you hear that banks are really most looking for when they are presenting a financial literacy program, and especially one that's focused on adults, which is what the GoVA Foundation is doing?
Sure, absolutely. I think it comes down to impact, right? They want to know that it matters. Anybody can deploy something super quick, right? With some of the programs that are available to the bankers that may be really a nice place to start. But I think that we really want to figure out what's a sustainable solution, what will really drive impact. And so not only finding the right partner, because partnerships are key to the CRA, right? To really figure out, well, what are the credit needs of the community? What specifically do adults need or families need to thrive? And how can we drive that, right? And how can we not only form this partnership, leverage our bank resources with our volunteers in our communities, but then really after we have the partnership and the program, how can we make sure that we're really meeting the intended outcome, right? So they're looking for impact. And, our officers have to document those outcomes and make sure that we actually deployed and made a difference in somebody's life, right? And so that's a little bit of a challenge. So they're really looking at what is the strategy of the bank? What are the credit needs of the community? How can we partner with another entity to become even more effective in changing people's lives? So it's a little bit of blend of partnerships, a little bit of pixie dust, and really driving that outcome-based approach to their work.
Thanks, Linda. And when we kind of met you early in our journey at the GoVA Foundation, you helped us kind of really communicate our value proposition in those regards, because every bank we talk to multiple banks every week. They'll have very different assessment areas, different types of requirements and constraints. And one thing that is interesting that we've found is we've been very flexible to meet a lot of unique problems, or not problems, I should say challenges, and in that to support that community, because they're all going to be very different. Everything from a small bank to a large bank. And our technology approach has been fantastic. We've been asked to try and support assessment areas in Guam to mountaintops in Montana to all of Washington, D.C. as an example. And each one is so different from what they provide. But I think one thing, too, is that constant feedback of, is the investment working? Is it supporting the community it needs the support? And that's one thing that we pride ourselves on, is that data. We can provide that data down to the individual, down to the cohort within the assessment area, the bank sponsors, as well as give you an idea of what the military and veteran demographic looks like across the country. Just this last year, we had over 1,000 users across the country improve their credit scores from 620 to 643 points. As a primary mechanism for using our platform as their primary goal, they use the tools, the classes, and the bank sponsors made it a reality for them to actually have that resource, which also means now that's a real benefit, but now they can actually leverage bank resources and be part of the banking institutions, if you will.
Well, congratulations on that success. That's great outcomes, right? And that's what we're looking for.
Yeah, well, I think one of the beautiful things of having a digital platform is that you get so much more data and metrics than we would typically find in a classroom environment or a workshop. So what we're hearing a lot of lately is this buzzword, innovation. We know that the banks are being asked to be more innovative, the regulators are expecting innovation, and the CRA officers are trying to find out what that would look like in each of their own bank examples. So we'd love to hear from you. What are you hearing about the need for innovation in the CRA programming, and what do you think that officers should be looking for when they're evaluating different forms of technology and how to deliver financial literacy in a most impactful way?
Sure. Well, I think it's really important to focus on, we could do a one-time workshop, or we can have a more innovative solution like your platform that really looks at a person or a family over time. And so when we're evaluating these partnerships and programs, we're looking at, well, has this existed in our market? Is this routinely done by other partners or programs? Are we approaching this in unique ways that will really drive impact and that we can actually measure the impact, right? And so this is the opportunity to really leverage capital, right? So the bank's capital to invest in these partnerships, but also leverage that technology to drive innovative experiences and ultimately the outcomes. That's what we're looking for, right? So we're really just looking at new ways to approach financial literacy that, from a CRA standpoint, it should be financial literacy for all, because we all care deeply about this work and feel like there's not enough financial literacy tools out there and that are accessible to all. So really just trying to shake things up, find new innovative partnerships that are available to our institutions. So, it's one thing to deliver a workshop, but to have a platform like yours that you can really look over time on the impact, I think would have a great impact if the banks are able to measure that and to really draft a narrative around that to show they're the first bank in this rural market to partner with you, right? And then this is the outcomes that we forged together. So It's also about the narrative, right? And really figuring out how do we meet the unique needs of the community.
For sure. And that's been one of the more exciting parts of my job doing marketing at GoVA, is that I get to see what all the users are doing on the platform, what topics are most interesting to people. Are they looking for information about mortgages and home buying, or are they focused more on budgeting for a new baby, or are they looking at retirement plans? Those are very different resources that people need at different times in their lives. So it's been really fun to see how people are interacting, and then to hear the stories, like you said, of the actual changes that are made over time. George alluded to the average credit score improvement that we saw, I think around an average of 23-point increase in credit score, which was a beautiful outcome. But we've also been able to measure a lot of reduction in financial stress. So when people first come to the platform, they're staying awake at night because they have a lot of questions and a lot of things running through their mind. And we've learned that through financial education, you can actually reduce that stress much more quickly than you can improve a credit score or, buff up a emergency savings account. So it's nice to see that measurable impact and those tangible results in our users. And that does definitely make it very rewarding. But I'd like to hear, banks are always looking for different nonprofit partnerships, and I'm sure you've seen some good examples and some bad examples in your time. I'd like to hear, what are some of those green flags versus red flags when banks are trying to partner with nonprofits in their communities?
Sure. I think it's interesting. I've actually forged the best relationships of my life from the community development work I did at the bank and getting out in community and learning about the various nonprofits and the various missions. And I think it's really important to really look at mission, right? And to make sure we're aligned on mission. And then the people matter. The relationships that I've forged, I still have really close friends because we worked on some really hard problems in the past, and we, negotiated and came up with some innovative solutions to serve. And they weren't always easy, so really looking for that mission alignment, the deep concern about changing people's lives, making sure that the partners also understand kind of the bank perspective, and the bank needs to understand, the nonprofit perspective, or, the partner's perspective too. And when we can come together and really meet both needs, then that is the powerful relationship that's available, right? And the collaboration is key, and the outcomes in the end, because we have to be able to position and craft the narrative to really show how this changed lives. And that takes time, it takes patience, and those partnerships are best forged around something really, really critical in the community, and then nothing will change overnight. So oftentimes we have to be patient, and it's truly a partnership. And the right partnerships are for the long term, right? And that's what we're looking for. Deep relationships over time to really drive impact. So that's what we look for.
And that's fantastic. And I think it goes into this next question we wanted to ask, because we hear a lot of different things too as it relates to the regulators. And it seems like while there is like a unified language to an extent with CRA, each bank has it seems like each team has, based off of their constraints, requirement, size, or the specific regulators that are evaluating their investments, have maybe like different ideas of what right may look like or not look like necessarily. And it's good for nonprofits that are looking to support a bank's CRA portfolio to be able to have some, I think, fluidity in navigating that as well. But from your experience, like, what do you think is like, what do the regulators really want to see when banks are presenting their CRA portfolio at the end of the year, so they can get that as they get that feedback on their investments and their impact?
Yeah, you have to be able to craft the story. It's really important to show the qualitative aspects, right, of the work, right? We can share the quantitative, the numbers, but to really be able to share the stories, and that matters to the examiners. So our CRA professionals know their bank the best, they know their community the best, and they know their performance the best. And so it's up to them to really craft the story and to share with the examiners, because the examiners are, going bank to bank, and they don't know the unique aspects of a community or the credit needs. So it's really up to the CRA professionals to, highlight the great work, the challenges, and then how they leverage capital for the greater good. So it's that mix of qualitative and quantitative together to really share the story of impact, I like to say. That's really the art of the CRA.
I love that as a writer myself. I think just the amount of times that you've emphasized storytelling and, hearing individual results. I think that really is what makes these relationships meaningful. It's that at the end of the day, it's not really about a grant. It's not about supporting a particular nonprofit over another, but it's really about those people in the community that you're able to impact, the lives that you're able to change. And everyone feels better when we can share the stories of those people. And so GoVA has definitely enjoyed gathering some of our member results, everything from small wins of people that are no longer living paycheck to paycheck, or they are finally making the right choices to set aside small amounts for an emergency fund so that they won't be caught off guard the next time they move or the next time an appliance breaks. And then we have really sweet stories of people who are planning for, a homecoming or a honeymoon and a wedding. We had one young man who was able to follow some savings tips, and he met his goal of being able to buy a real gold promise ring for his fiance. And those things are just very touching, that's not something that you'd always hear from, like, well, I went to a budgeting class and then I learned how to balance a spreadsheet. what we're really seeing is that people are able to implement changes and see real results for themselves and their families and their relationships. And that's what ultimately matters. And I think that's kind of what brought us to you and to your resources. We wanted to emphasize the presence of the military community, because you talked about how the banks know their communities so well, but we've also learned that veterans are often kind of invisible, underserved members in their own communities, especially if they're no longer near a military base. They no longer have that presence of active duty serving. And so we, of course, focus on serving that military and veteran community. And we were really honored to be part of your podcast over the summer. You invited us on as guests, and immediately got a lot of great feedback from CRA officers who were reaching out saying, tell me more about this military community. I never thought about serving them. Our bank has no existing programs. So we wanted to follow up with you and hear, did you get any feedback after that of people who were more aware of military and veteran members in their communities? Or do you think that that's something that is on CRA officers' minds when they're trying to meet their community needs?
Well, I think everybody has a different point in their CRA journey, and this is the challenge, right? We have some folks that are brand new, to running a CRA program, and then we have the seasoned folks that have been in it for 30 or 40 years. And when you're just starting a CRA program or you're just learning about CRA, maybe you were voluntold to run the CRA program, right? And you're just trying to understand, a little bit more about the reg. It's really compliance focused at first, as you're trying to understand, the essence of your job. And I think over time is when you start to learn more about the credit needs of the community composition, the opportunities to further serve. And those folks that have been in it for a while certainly understand, the subtleties in the different groups. So I would say it's a continuum, right? And for those of us that weren't exposed early on to a military community, then it's something that you learn about over time, right? And so of course, the military and the families serve such an important purpose. And at first, our CRA officers, it's not in their realm of understanding, right? Maybe personally, but not from a professional standpoint. And then when they're settled in their program, you're like, oh, this is another opportunity to serve. And so then it's a beautiful way to really get to understand the military communities and then figure out ways to serve. So I think that, it just depends on where they are in their CRA journey, I like to call it, right? And anytime I've had the opportunity to highlight the great work like GoVA, I have people follow up with me and they're like, oh, thank you for reminding me and giving us this opportunity to partner. It goes with a lot of different things, right? The awareness needs to come, and then you're like, oh, now I can take action and blend this into my CRA program, and then it's a beautiful thing, right? And oftentimes, those folks that are newer to this, they may not understand that the military community, oftentimes there's a high percentage of low to moderate income people and may not have made that connection, right? Mm-hmm. And it's that connection that makes the difference. So educating more folks like you do, and you're so well positioned, of course, because this is deeply personal, and you're the perfect nonprofit to spread the word. That's why I'm happy to partner with you and, share that there's more opportunities out there. So I just think that in the world of CRA, there's so many gems and opportunities to change people's lives. And serving your military families is just another opportunity that's appreciated.
We are absolutely thrilled to have your support and your willingness to learn more about that community. I will definitely say that there's two stats that have really stood out to the CRA officers and bank representative we've spoken to nationwide. And one is that high number of LMI members in the military community that you alluded to. In the active duty population alone, over 40% of their households would qualify. as LMI. Of course, that depends a little bit on where you're stationed. If you are in a high cost of living area like Hawaii, or like where my family was sent to San Diego, California, then almost all the military families sent there were considered LMI because we were not making that regional salary.
Right.
So that is definitely one number that has stood out to a lot of the banks that we've spoken to. And the other one is the high number of veterans in their communities.
Yes.
There are publicly available stats on the number of veterans in every county. And we often estimate that around 10% of the total U.S. adult population is either veterans or spouses of veterans. And that is a huge proportion of your local population. And so we want to certainly bring awareness and visibility to these communities. And not every single one of them is LMI and in need. Some of them are thriving and succeeding and doing very well. But for those who do need support, we want to make sure that we're providing those resources.
And that's where our CRA officers will need to talk to you to really understand. And do you help them look at the community for which they serve, their assessment area, and you can bring up stats to help them understand the percentage of LMI families so that they can craft a program then to serve?
Yes, absolutely. We do very hyper-localized data and sharing, and we actually do that as a free consultation. So that's part of my joy in meeting with these banks nationwide, is to really dive into their local assessment areas and the opportunities that are there.
It's an important service, because you have access to data and know where to get reliable data. So that's beautiful. Thank you.
Correct. Well, George, before we have to wrap up with Linda, is there anything you wanted to ask her, final thoughts, or sharing more information about her resources?
Yeah, I think as we kind of come to a close here, Linda, we're really passionate about supporting our partners, and we're really happy you decided to do this with us as we, continue to be a value add to our CRA network here at the GoVA Foundation. And our hope is that some of these CRA teams and officers, maybe some of those early stage career CRA professionals you discussed, they're trying to wrap their fingers around, hey, how do we have the most impact for our strategy going forward? So let's close out with a little bit of some practical guidance from, how you see the world of CRA. So if there is a CRA officer listening right now and they're thinking about their strategy, what would be the most important question that they should be asking and looking for with regard to nonprofit partners?
Well, I think it's important to have a comprehensive plan. So I say you should develop a CRA plan. And if you're brand new to CRA, just figure out how CRA works first. But once you're ready to come up for air and really purposefully drive and form a CRA program, then you can't do it alone, right? So it's a beautiful opportunity to start to look outward and look at all of the community partners. I call them the external stakeholders, right? And to learn more about how they serve, to see if there's a good connection, right? To see if there's some congruent outcomes that you're both striving for, right? To form a partnership. So CRA is not done by one. And so CRA officers need to look internally to see who are my stakeholders to help support and drive impact. And then externally, who are the stakeholders? And nonprofits are so important to that work. So I think looking at alignment to your goals, and then finding the right partners to move forward. And that's looking for loan opportunities, service, and investment opportunities, right? And so it's unique for each market. It's unique for each bank. The bank has full autonomy to figure out how do you uniquely meet the credit needs of a community. And every community is different, and the nonprofit partners. So it's a little bit of the art of the CRA is really getting out there and learning more, being curious, and then forming these partnerships over time. And it does take time. And it starts with just being curious about, who exists in your market, and then reaching out to start a conversation. So I'm not sure if that's helpful, but
it's perfect.
Start. Yeah.
And And I'm really glad that you emphasize staying curious, reaching out, and the art of CRA. And I think a really great way to maintain some of that connectivity is to talk a little bit as we close out about you and your organization, CRA Today. How can some of these new CRA officers that we'll be reaching out to understand how to stay in connectivity, how to reach out? We love being part of the CRA Today ecosystem. We learn from it each and every month and every time you publish new content. And part of our goal here too is to make sure we're helping expand some of that reach to our network as well, because you're such a value add to not only nonprofits but also the banking teams.
Well, thank you. Of course, I'm biased, but I think it's really important that every CRA officer has a person, has somebody so they don't feel alone. So I really created this community because I often felt alone. I had a mentor in this work, right, at my bank. But as you're doing the day-to-day, you feel like no one understands CRA in your bank, and it's really difficult. So I created a community where our officers are known, they're seen, we work on really hard problems, and we learn from each other. I think the thing I'm most proud of is the community that we've forged together and created. It's really about them. I'm really just bringing people together on the platform, right? And there's so much sharing, so much generosity, and there's so much subjectivity in CRA. And so we really approach, let's say, maybe there's a challenge around a qualified activity. And so I'll share my thoughts, but it's really about everybody else around the room. Well, did you get credit for that? And who's your regulator? And what's your asset size? And, so that worked for you, but it didn't work for you. And all of those subtleties, my desired outcome is that officer with that question leaves our opportunity, our conversation with the next step forward, that they can move forward with clarity, that everybody has to make their own business decision, and there is subjectivity, but you move forward with integrity and confidence because they have better context. And so that's what we're creating. And it's pretty exciting. You can get this by creating your own network, right? But if you don't have that available to you, join the CRA Hub, and we welcome you, and we have banks of all different sizes, and that's how we serve. Really just creating that community I wish I had to support the daily work. And the last thing I'll share is that we can all attend a webinar, but how we differentiate ourselves, and what matters to me deeply is that we learn a concept, but then we apply it. Because we won't actually drive change if we just listen to webinars and we just build the capacity. We actually have to drive the change and implement. And so we help people implement. We have lots of tools and resources to help everybody take the next action to move forward. So, of course, I'm biased. We have an amazing community. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, it's been a great asset, and I'm so glad that you are part of the community and offering your time and your support. Again, GoVA is very grateful that you've taken an interest in our nonprofit and really the work that we're doing. And I think there's so much alignment there with the idea of, walking with people to help them build confidence and take the next step. That's exactly what we're trying to do with our financial education for the military community, is just kind of change and improve one life at a time, give people the tools they need so that they can make that next decision with clarity and confidence. So, so excited that you're able to do that for the CRA community, and we appreciate all of our CRA partners who allow us to keep doing that for the military community. But wanted to close out by thanking you for your time today. Obviously, in the notes below, we will have all the contact information for those who are listening and want to reach out to Linda and learn more about joining the CRA Hub. And we'll also have information about GoVA Foundation and the resources we provide to the military. So for those who are listening, if you're interested in developing a CRA program that really reaches the military in your communities and you want to take the next step, then please reach out and contact us.
Well, thank you for all you do. I really appreciate the great work that you do on your platform, and thank you for your service.